We have our first tournament results for Duelist Nexus and what we're expecting to actually see for this format. Big 30% of you that have not smashed the evolving crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out on more honest content. Yes, Kong's Cards ran this event. You can use discount code MCO40 and save on your purchase over there. It's going to include all the fun Duelist Nexus pre-sales and all that other good stuff that's on their site. So yeah, discount code MCO40. We'll over there. So we're going to be looking at our breakdown here with Duelist Nexus legal. And what's very interesting about this is the set actually does have an impact on the meta, a little bit more than I think people were kind of expecting it to. Bysteel Dragon Link had a double-sided representation in the top cut here, which I'm not all that surprised. Like, in a smaller run, Bysteel Dragon Link, actually Dragon Link in general, always seems like it has a very strong finish and the ability to kind of come out ahead above the rest of the competition. So I'm not surprised about that. We also had Kashtira out here asserting its dominance on the meta. I'm also not surprised about that in the very least. Now, we also had Sprite Melfi. If we've learned our lesson about Sprite in the past, it's anytime that you can combine this deck with any sort of engine, it usually does well. Now we have Unchained here. Now, from what I was told from people watching this, they were genuinely impressed with, how Unchained was kind of flowing, how good the deck feels. And I mean, the entire deck's premise is, using your opponent's monsters to kind of capitalize on link summons, obviously, and, the ability to filter through your option trees to set up. I think it's pretty good. We also had Purely out here. Now remember, Purely does get a support card out of Duel. Actually, they get 2 support cards out of Duelist Nexus, which a lot of people kind of put emphasis on here to, help strengthen that deck, which is pretty good. And then we also had Branded kind of bringing up the rear here, which, I mean, overall, looking at this, I am happy to see that Duelist Nexus looks like it will do something. I was kind of worried that, maybe we won't see something, but as long as people aren't really prepared for Unchained, I think we're going to be in an interesting position. All right, let's pass on over to top deck list. All right, winning our event here is Dragon Link, and yes, that is ye old Assault Synchrons in here doing their thing. I will tell you, the free extensions that you get from this, the ability to, toggle through your big synchro friends here and set up into a game-winning position usually feels pretty good. I will also say that it's pretty interesting to see that this deck is capitalizing on skill drain in the side deck. I feel like this gives this deck an extra little defensive line that, it normally might not have. And trust me when I say this, the more defensive options that, a deck like this that's obviously going to be putting up incredibly large monsters on the field. If your opponent's going to have a hard time, outing these big creatures, that's where a deck like this actually comes in and gets the chance to do its thing. So, not all that surprised to see Dragon Link actually fancying up and getting the chance to do something. I don't really see anything else really too out of left field for this build. It feels extremely standard. Next up here, hey, look, we have more Dragon Link for you here. And, this build's not playing no skill drains. Instead, we opted to push the evenly matches down to the side deck. Now, in the last build, you've seen that those evenlies were main decked, which means that they had a better going first matchup. But this build opted for Dark Ruler No More to kind of push for that difference of opinion. So I think that that's kind of interesting. Like, you've got rotating thoughts here between Dark Ruler and evenly between the builds. But unfortunately, the evenly matched variant did come out on top. It's not like these two duelists didn't have to play or anything for the finals. You don't really see who was going to walk away with the big W there. Yeah, it was Dragon Link. Outside of that, all real things considered for the Dragon Link deck, I think that your matchups are really dependent on how your deck wants to flow, and it is by far one of the most interesting decks currently available, at least in terms of ceiling. Next up here, we have our Melfi Sprite deck. Now this is, it gets called Melfi because we were playing a splash with 3 Melfi monsters in here. And then, of course, the ability to marry Melfis, blah, blah, blah. You're pretty used to this stuff. See that we are playing the Iprea in here for draw power, which is pretty standard. And then, of course, you play the Nimble package. This little Nimble package here is going to carry you. the fact that, you know, we all know how good, you know, milling off the Nimble Angler, summoning up all of these, and then going ahead and extending on into, you know, all of the little friends down here. Now, this build is not playing totally awesome. I've noticed that Toad has been seeing a lot less play as of late. Don't get me wrong, Toad is still a fantastic card, but at this point in time, I feel like players are trying to dial back the reliance on Toad, and I think that that's probably a good thing as well. The more that you can dial off a reliance on a card, it typically has been good. It's allowed this deck to explore other options. Next up here is our Unchained deck, and yes, we are on triple Shavara and one copy of the Shayama here, and then of course, I mean, the new King Yama here on special summon and an Unchained monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And if a card or cards you control is destroyed by battle card effect while this is in your graveyard, banish this card, special summon a fiend from your hand or graveyard, and destroy one card you control. This card is literally like the absolute nuts for this. And we're probably going to see the exploration out here of some variations with this in Labyrinth, because unfortunately, they do flow together, because guess what? This does require, you know, 2 fiend monsters, and Labyrinth has no problem being able to splash this in, because this does not lock you in any sort of capacity. So I do think that that's kind of interesting, just the fact that you can blend these engines together, and then how good that these 2 cards actually are at the end of the day. So I think this is relatively strong. Next up here is our Purely deck. Now, Purely does get the new little Nor down here. Look how adorable it is. Once per turn, discard a card, target 1 card your opponent controls, or up to 2 instead of this has Sleepy Memory as material, and return them to the hand. And then up to 3 times per turn, you can attach a card on the field that was a quick play Purely card to this card. And then you can set a trap card directly from your deck that has Purely in the name. So this actually expedites the process to getting you Leap, which is pretty good. And then, of course, you do have Vanity's Fiend down here. I don't know why people are surprised that Purely is playing Vanity's Fiend. Like, this should be like the least surprising thing that this deck actually attempts to do. Like, setting up a Floodgate monster is going to be one of the main reasons why this deck can actually function. And if you can't actually get the deck off the ground, you know, your backup plan is this. Or, you know, you set up, you know, the big cat next to a fiend. Your opponent's like, oh, what do I do? Nothing. Next up is Kashtira. Now, in terms of all developments, all real things aside, one of the most interesting things that I see this build doing is we're playing Utopic Future with Utopic Future Draco. Now, this is an extremely heavy investment in this deck, because this isn't really all that easy to make. I feel like this would be like a turn 2-ish play, where, you know, like the Shangri-La, you know, kind of stayed around or something like that. It's going to depend on how well I feel like you set up your opening hand in order to even think about making this as an option tree. But nonetheless, this did show up, and it is very interesting just to see like the ideas and things kind of coming together for this. Yeah, Utopic Future Draco. I didn't think anybody would try this out here. Of course, you got your standard defensive lines, additional defensive lines. This build is pretty standard, all things considered. Next up here, we found our other Kashtira variant. Now, we don't get as exciting, crazy as what you just saw down here, because, you know, we're not playing Utopic Future Draco. Instead, you know, we're sending out our defensive options really strongly here. We're on triple Book of Moon and triple Forbidden Lands. Like, this is crazy to me that they got away with extending this all the way out and doing its thing. I also see here that Nightmare Corrupt Ribley, one of the best side deck cards that this deck has ever had in its arsenal here, getting the ability to pass this on over to your opponent is pretty good. Yeah, there's nothing else I can really think about what to do with Kashtira here, because like this deck is, it's so standardized. I mean, once again, I mean, if you're trying little freaky things like the Utopic Future Draco, you might get away with it, but I mean, like, both decks here ended up in top 8, which isn't too far above. Alright, next up here is our branded deck. Biggest things here are 50 cards. You know, we always joke about branded players trying to find as many ways as they can to jam as many things as they can into the deck, and I think that this is a good example here, giving you the chance to kind of do your thing. And then, of course, evenly matched in 50 cards. I mean, you do have super polys and dark rollers here as well, but like, I feel like this is a joke at this stage. If you're playing this many cards and you're getting away with this, we are also, of course, playing the Eradicator Epidemic Virus. I guess this is on the off chance that we do high roll the Crossout Designator and then we swing this, but very interesting little card choices here, and then of course Gimmick Puppet and Jinzo here. All of the things that you're very used to seeing here at this point in time, all kind of wrapping up, coming together, and still doing its thing. Outside of that, still feels very, very, very standard, even at 50 cards. Now, we also had a Constellar Tellarknight deck here actually show up. Started 3-0, which was an impressive run, and unfortunately ended up scrubbing out here. But I wanted to include this because when we start looking at like cool little matchups from this event, I actually ran into our Unchained player, which was very unfortunate. But I do think that a lot of the little choices with this are very interesting. It's not exactly like you see Constellars every single day. I mean, you do have to go down like Stellar Night Diamond here, or Zeus Turbo it up, in order to kind of make sure that you can get into a good position. But I think that this deck has some pretty good things going for it. Also, goes and matches like free real estate. You flip this, your opponent's just going to look at you and go, what am I supposed to do to, like, you know, actually win the game? And unfortunately, I mean, the answer is not really a whole lot. Like, you kind of just wrap it up and call it a day there. So that is our breakdown out of the first Duelist Nexus results that we have. So what do you think? Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.